Revived Thoughts is a production of Revive Studios.
This is Troy and Joel. You are listening to Revive Thoughts.
Troy, today we're doing a revived conversation. I love doing revived conversations. I don't know much about what we're talking about today yet, but you said, Joel, I want to talk to you about, I want to do a revived conversation about something involving nuclear warheads. And I said, say no more. I'm in. Well, save it for the pod. We'll jump on and do that.
People often ask us about these revived conversations, and they'll be like, "Are they scripted? Did you put it all together beforehand?" Nope. I have research in front of me, but they're not. This is not scripted. And in fact, sometimes Joel and I kind of intentionally leave the other person in the dark so we can get their fresh thoughts raw. Like it's really so. We really, if we argue, if we fight, if we disagree, it's not for the show. We're really arguing, fighting, or disagreeing, or whatever it is, or thinking these thoughts on air, which is a little dangerous because sometimes we get to the end of it, I'm like, I don't know if I would have said it that way had I thought that through more, but yeah.
Okay, but first, before we jump into the episode, I'm excited I finally get to talk about my new project I've been working on, and hopefully, listener, you're aware of it because you've seen the trailer in the feed, but in case you haven't, there's a new podcast that I've been working on that's finally out there for you to listen to. It's called Real Missionaries in Real Time. And the premise of the show, the idea of the show is that we track a fixed group of missionaries, the same group of missionaries throughout the course of the year, and kind of get to experience ministry with them in real time. And kind of the premise of it was that, like, it seems like a lot of missionary podcasts are all retrospective. We're all looking back on things that have happened, but there's nothing that's really kind of documenting what current ongoing missions looks like right now. And so that was the kind of the inspiration for a show like this, is like, what if we kind of were embedded with missionaries and got to hear monthly updates about what's going on in their ministry, how people can be praying, and then the next month we get to check back in and hear how things went, and hear what's coming down the pipeline next. And this was actually something that Troy, in one of our mini brainstorming exercises that we do throughout the years. Troy's a big idea guy. He's a good ideas guy.
I have so many ideas that I can't apply.
Ideas.
It kills me, actually.
But this years and years ago, this was the current realization of it isn't exactly what you were mentioning, but it's an evolution of
even
kind of those
better.
thoughts.
It's a better idea, Joel. You ran with it. You took a dream and you made it real. Come on.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I really hope, the kind of the intention was to have a show that helps people in the church just feel closer to missions, to make it real for people. Again, not as like a retrospective story, but as something that is currently happening and ongoing right now. And it's something you can be involved in and be praying for and to be a part of. We'll link to it down below. You can also just search Real Missionaries in Real Time. This is the first month, so I'm introducing the different missionaries that are going to be on the show, and then in subsequent months, we circle back around with them and we get updates. And I'm excited. It's a ton of fun, and I enjoy getting to hang out with missionaries and hear about what they're doing from month to month.
I don't know much about that, but I will say you should listen. You should subscribe. You should go give them 5 stars, because those things help a lot. Help tell people, if you know somebody who's serving overseas, send them this link. They might find like, hey, this is super relatable. I totally know what these people are going through. And likewise, if you know people who, a young person is interested in this, maybe someday I'll grow up to be that, send them this link. They can learn more about what it is. I remember, Joel mentioned this idea we had over a brainstorm session. I do remember that because I remember when I was living in China many years ago, I thought to myself, it'd be nice to listen to a podcast that had like, what do other people feel about this? And there was nothing like that. And I can't believe that in the, I think 10 years or so since that time, nobody's come up with this yet. And I know I can think of many reasons logistically why nobody has, but it would be such a good resource. I could imagine future, mission organizations. Maybe I'm dreaming too big for you, Joel, but I can imagine future groups in the future being like, hey, you want to be interested in missions? That's great. Here's 1,000 different pieces of paperwork that we're not going to read because we're going to just have you say them all to us again like 45 times during interviews. But and also you should listen to Real Missionaries in Real Time. But Joel, it's a great show that kind of looks into the life of being this, and it can help you get an idea of what it's like. That's what I think will happen. So I'm really excited for you, Joel. I think it's going to do really well. I think it's an idea that's time has come. So if you are listening, please make sure you add that to your podcast feed.
Yeah.
I imagine your podcast feed is our show, is Martyrs and Missionaries, and now you get to add this one too.
Yeah, and I'm excited to bring over the Revive Studio audience to listen to it and let me know your thoughts. You know, me and the Revive Studio audience, we've been together for a long time now, so you can be honest. You know, write in and let us know your thoughts as you gather your thoughts about the show.
Okay.
But it's an exciting concept, and
does that mean co-hosts of your current podcast can also be really honest and really let you have it
please
too?
Yeah.
All right.
Most importantly of all, let us
oh,
know
for sure. Okay, good. I'm gonna really come after you then with the really technical critical detail slashes. No, okay, we're gonna definitely give it to you, and it's gonna be great. And this is, I think you said, if I recall, last thing we'll say maybe on this, but it's a seasonal show. And so any ideas that people can give you, then you can apply that to future seasons as well and continue to make it like even better.
Exactly. Yeah. The current plan is to do like a 9-month stretch with missionaries, and then possibly rotate those out for new missionaries, or if they want to continue on, we can continue them on as well. But that's kind of the format that we're operating on right now.
Yeah, and I'm not even just saying this for, your advertising pitch, but I'm actually excited to listen to this. I'm curious what people are doing around the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to know what's going on in these locations that you guys have, and I'm curious if it's the same stuff in other places in the world or not. So it'll be exciting. It'll be good. All right, we should probably jump into the episode.
Sounds good. Troy, lay up for me what we're talking about.
Okay.
Today.
So Joe, I'm gonna pitch you just something small, something I've been working on. When you were creating a super cool new show, I the other day created a new argument for God, like a new philosophical, straight from the top to bottom argument for God, and I've run it through 2 different AIs that also agree nobody has made this exact argument. They've said they're very close ones, but no one has made. They even did like that logic theorem, like if A, B kind of thing, and it's like if you were going to formulate it, it would look like this. And then they kept being like, but I don't know, anything you could, they would argue, they would say, well, I'd be like, give me the downsides, AI. And the AI would be like, well, it could just be attributed to luck. And I'm like, but if the only explanation we have for this is either my argument for God or luck, it's probably a pretty good argument for God. So, because we could just say that you're just trying to give to luck what should go to God. What am I talking about? All right, let's go.
I'm very confused, and I'm very curious how this is going to tie into nuclear.
All right, so I saw recently. I found a book in a bookstore, $1. It was in like the thrifty section, and it was by kind of a person who slightly inspired Revive Studios. Is slight even the right word to use for it? His name is Dan Carlin. He wrote a history book, The End is Always Near, and he had a very long chapter dedicated to nuclear bombs. And it opened with this quote, though, that really stuck with me. It's by Bertrand Russell, which says, "You may reasonably expect a man to walk a tightrope safely for 10 minutes, but it would be unreasonable to expect him to do so without accident for 200 years." And the point the person who wrote the book was like, it's kind of amazing that, and he said it denies explanation. There's no explanation for the fact that humans have never accidentally or intentionally blew themselves up with this power that we now have. And so I would say, well, we've been walking this tightrope for 81 years. How is it that humans have been walking with this power to destroy the entire earth and have not done so yet? How have we really been so successful? And then my argument is going to be, I don't think we're on a tightrope at all. I think we've been wearing a safety harness and we didn't even notice. I think the reason why humans are not going to blow themselves up, have not blown themselves up, and will not blow themselves up is because God is protecting us. It's actually an argument for God. The fact that we humans have had the ability for over 8 decades to destroy the entire earth, and we have come incredibly close to doing so many, many, many times, but we never have, is not because of pure luck. It is not because of just a bunch of accidents that went the right way. It is actually because God is protecting humanity this way. He's not going to let us blow ourselves up. And It's actually a pretty difficult argument to destroy, because the only way you could really destroy it is if you actually do set off the nukes. But at that point, my argument doesn't matter because we're all dead anyway.
Is that it? Is that the conclude pitch?
So
That's
my pitch. That's my proposal. Now I can walk you through the many accidents and the many near misses humanity has had.
Okay.
Because it's one thing to hear that and go, okay, we had nukes, big deal. But can I just go through the number of ways we've almost blown ourselves up in the last 80 years?
Sure.
And then you try to explain to me how we have not blown ourselves up without God.
Okay.
Okay. For starters, how many nuclear bombs have we dropped, Joel?
2.
2 nuclear bombs, one on Hiroshima and one on Nagasaki, correct?
Uh-huh.
Except that's not true.
2 in anger. Is that a better way to say it?
Incorrect. We have accidentally dropped multiples of nuclear bombs from the sky multiples of times. We just have only had 2 go off. We dropped a nuclear bomb outside of Quebec in Canada in 1950. It
Not
just didn't
intentionally,
explode.
though.
Well, it's still a nuclear bomb falling from the sky, though. I mean,
Okay.
we dropped it, right?
Sure.
It fell
I'm
out of an
trying
airplane.
to gauge the type of languages you're using here.
I know. And let's say another one. Did you know in over Spain, we accidentally dropped 4 nuclear bombs
Oof.
on Spain. And we didn't find one of them for 80 days because it was in the ocean. But they also didn't go off. We've accidentally dropped multiples of nuclear bombs. We only count Hiroshima and Nagasaki, like you said, because those were our intentional ones we dropped out of anger or to end the war or whatever. But when it comes to the number of nuclear bombs that have fallen out of the sky and landed somewhere, the number is actually higher than 2. It's just by pure luck,
Okay.
pure
Well, no.
providence that those didn't
No.
actually go off.
Those have to be armed in a very specific way.
They were.
They were not. They were not.
They were.
No shot. There's no way that. Why
Yeah.
would they arm? No. Like, they have to go
The
through.
4 that went off over Spain were genuinely armed because they were actually doing, back in the day when they had those planes doing 24/7 flybys, that was one of those planes. It crashed with the plane that was refueling it in midair.
I might want to look into this further to validate, but go on.
I thought you were a nuclear bomb. I thought you would be all about. I thought you'd be spilling your own examples as soon as I mentioned this. Joel. I
Don't
was
get me
expecting
wrong.
you.
We've had a lot of nuclear bomb accidents, but it takes a very specific set of procedures to make a nuclear bomb go boom when it drops out of an airplane. And to my knowledge, I don't know of any that have met those requirements that weren't intentional.
Sure, it is true that a nuclear bomb does take some exact set of things. And clearly, by the fact that we still have a Spain and we still have a Quebec, they didn't hit all of the exact things perfectly in the way that you would need the bomb to do so. Or we accidentally nuclear bombed Spain and Quebec and our maps are wrong, right? However, here's the thing. It also, would you agree, Joel, that throwing a nuclear bomb out of an airplane at any point is probably considered pretty dangerous? I mean, when we move nuclear bombs around in nuclear facilities, we tend to handle those things with kid gloves, right? Because you're not supposed to throw them out of airplanes. Mm-hmm. And so would you also agree that even if it doesn't have every single switch flipped, dropping it from a crashing from a plane and falling below, surrounded by fire, and all of that kind of stuff that an airplane crashing has, it's pretty fortunate that it didn't actually go off at all.
Again, I think I'd push back on like the fail safes that are in place. I mean, you might rupture
In
the
wait. I'm going to push back on you. In 1950, like we're not talking 2026. We're talking 1950. They did not have the internet. They did not have like 90% of the technology we use on a daily basis today. But you're expecting that they have the perfect combination of flip switches and fail safes to ensure that a bomb is perfectly safe to throw out the window as long as it doesn't. I mean, if that's the case, then why were they handling them so gently?
I think more on principle.
I mean, we have nuclear reactors melting down around the same time.
Yeah,
but bombs can fall
reactors.
from the sky safely.
I'm not a nuclear physicist. I don't know, like a...
Don't you lie to the audience. They know you're a nuclear physicist.
I think the worst that could happen was that you'd get radioactive debris scattered along the drop zone.
Which they did, by the way.
Sure,
They did have a
and
lot
don't get
of-
me wrong, it's a bad day. Like, no one wants that to happen. But I think it's semi-impossible for it to cause a nuclear explosion.
That brings us to point number 2. There had been also times when people had the switches to flip where they were armed. And these weren't accidents where the nuclear bombs just fell from the sky, like in Spain and Quebec. These were also incidences where they intentionally armed them with the intent of blowing up people around the world. Let's take a great example, Cuban Missile Crisis. Everyone has probably heard of, maybe vaguely remembers in their history class, or perhaps you are listening and you were alive during the Cuban Missile Crisis, as it was not that long ago. 2 incredibly stressful weeks for the United States of America and the Soviet Union had a face-off. The Soviet Union had been secretly building missile launch systems in Cuba so they could hit any part of America with nuclear missiles anytime they wanted to. Whereas when the U.S. found out about that, they didn't know whether or not Russia already had the nukes there. They did not know, what the timeline was for getting the nukes there. They called Russia. It became a big standoff. It ends with, America having a bunch of ships on one side blockading Cuba from the Soviet Union, and the whole world kind of held with bated breath. Would the United States and Russia go to nuclear Armageddon or not? And there's a lot that went into that. But there were also 2 incidents, and also, by the way, weirdly, the same 2 weeks where America and Russia almost went to nuclear war. And it affects everybody, because if these 2 countries blow each other up with their tens of thousands of warheads, the entire world goes down. But also China and India, the 2 biggest population centers in the world, also had a short war during that same 2-week period. So kind of a crazy time period to be alive. But there were also 2 incidences that happened. One of them is quite famous, and one of them is less famous, where we almost tripped the Cuban. So that already extremely tense situation almost got tripped twice by 2 different failures. The first one is kind of well known. There was a captain of a Soviet nuclear submarine. He started seeing charges, the kind of bombs they put in the water that can blow up a submarine for whatever reason, were falling around his submarine. He thought that they were under attack. All odds were that the Allies were dropping these bombs to take down the submarine. They were trying to reach out and communicate with Moscow and ask, hey, are we at war with America? When they went underwater, and the last time they had communicated, it was the middle of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Things could have gone badly. Do I launch a nuclear torpedo or not at these Ally ships and destroy them? Instead of doing the launch, and despite the fact that these charges were detonating around them, he decided to come up for air and check in on what was going on. Turned out the Allies were not dropping real charges on him. They were dropping fake ones to get him to come up for air to see what he was doing. They only knew a submarine was there. They didn't know he was a nuclear submarine, and they wouldn't have dropped them if they had known that. If he had launched that nuclear torpedo thinking they were at war, he would have started World War III for sure. And he almost did. It was kind of protocol to do so, and he couldn't communicate with Moscow, but he took the risk and lifted his submarine up to see if he could communicate with Moscow before he launched a nuclear torpedo. We were that close to setting off a war. We were one captain of a submarine's call away from doing so. At the exact same time, in the same 2-week period, the United States had another similar close call. There was a belief among all of the U.S. military bases that if America and Russia went to nuclear war, Russia would attempt to sabotage their nuclear bases first. You will launch the nukes, but you won't be able to because we sabotaged you. And so the U.S. bases were on very high alert. Well, one guard saw a shadowy figure breaking over the fence and trying to get through the fence. So he shoots at this person. And when he shoots at this person, this puts the base on high alert. Well, the base sets off their alarms. The base had been told, is it in Montana? I think it's in Montana, that if these alerts start going off, you have to go to war. These planes need to lift off and take off. There will be no drills. Once the alerts are on, these planes need to get in their air and fly over to Russia. As the planes are getting ready to take off, the people are able to wave them down and let them know this was a false alert. What caused this false alert that almost sent a bunch of flyers flying towards Russia in the middle of the Cuban Missile Crisis? A bear. A bear was attempting to get over the fence, which caused the guard to shoot at it. He couldn't see it was a bear. It was a shadowy figure. He shoots at the bear. The bear runs away. They never did find the bear, but they're pretty sure it was just a bear. That's how close, again, in the same 2-week period during the Cuban Missile Crisis, we had 2 different military incidences that almost led to World War III. And if that World War had happened, nuclear Armageddon. And that's just for 2 weeks in October of 1962. There are well known dozens and dozens of these incidences. In fact, the estimate could be as high as 200 different times where nuclear things went that close to going down. In France, there was a thunderstorm that messed with their communication system. They thought nuclear Armageddon had started. They scrambled their fighter jets and got them up in the air. We know that Russia also has another very famous incident with Captain Stanislav, who also saw and read a communication saying it looked like America was sending 5 nuclear missiles his way. He goes against his superior officers and will not turn in the report saying nuclear Armageddon is happening. If he turned it in, the protocol was to attack back. He doesn't turn it in, and it found out it was a technological error. It had been a new system that had made an error. Another time in NATO, they almost also launched nuclear bombs because nuclear missiles looked like they were on the way, and it was a radar misreading the moon rising. And again, there are almost 200 instances like this that we know of. This is the ones we know of between Russia and America. This doesn't include the ones that places like China have never released, because I can't imagine they have none. They just don't tell you about them when they happen. And by the way, those same soldiers in Montana, they also have a weird story about, apparently, and this is just their story. In 1967, at one point, they went, according to eyewitnesses, and you can look this up, I don't believe it's true, but this is what they say. They went to launch nuclear weapons, or not launch nuclear weapons. They went to get a hold of nuclear weapons, but they lost their ability to run the nuclear weapons because a UFO flew over. Now, I don't think a UFO probably actually flew over. I don't think UFOs are that interested in our nuclear weapons. But should that scare you, that the people who think and who are running the nuclear weapons think that UFOs are flying? Like, in fact, actually, statistically speaking, UFOs are more likely to be seen by nuclear sites than anywhere else. And again, that either aliens are real, or the people in charge of nuclear facilities are seeing UFOs in the sky all the time. And that's kind of creepy too. So does that give you a lot of confidence in the people who are running these missiles? Like, yeah, they're normal people, except for the fact that they see UFOs all the time. Oh, and one more thing. That same camp in Montana, actually the one where the bear was in Wisconsin, the camp in Montana was the UFO camp. They also got caught in 2014 cheating their nuclear launch code tests and got a big scandal where hundreds of officers were found to be cheating on their tests to get the promotions and stuff. They were passing out the answers beforehand. That test is very strict, and the only way to get the promotion is to get 100% on it, and people weren't passing it, so they started kind of under the cover passing those tests. So now we know that there was a group of people who had access to these launch codes who didn't even pass the test to have those launch codes. And when you run these stories one after another, bomb mistakenly dropped on Savannah in 1957 by an emergency release pen. That one didn't have the plutonium in it, but still, there's a lot more of these than there should be, right, Joel? Like, how many times can we drop a bomb on a group of people, or almost have something go off by a group of people before we start to go, that's a little suspicious?
I see a little bit of holes in your logic, I feel like.
Good. I've prepared counter arguments for everything, so I'm ready to go.
So let me start off by just asking, what makes you think, like, what is your premise that makes you operate on that you think that we won't all be wiped out and killed? Like, why aren't we just inevitably a moment away from everyone being wiped out?
So here's a couple of things that I think we need to keep in mind. Historically speaking, humans have had a penchant for war and blood that goes all the way back to the very beginning, all the way back to Cain and Abel. And whenever one civilization has developed technology that gives them an edge over another civilization, they use that technology. Whether it's the longbow, whether it's saddles on horses, whether it's the musket, they use it, and they use it against their enemies very, very willfully. I mean, colonialism would not have worked if the Europeans that conquered different places put down their guns and picked up spears and arrows to fight fairly with the other colonies. Like, we know that they did great tragedies and atrocities with the technology they used. And this was the way all human history worked. When the machine gun was used, it was used on the other side in World War I. When the tank was invented, they immediately rolled it over to attack their enemy. The atomic bomb is where things suddenly shift. We used it on America, used it on Japan once, and then never used it again. It could have been used in the Korean War on North Korea. It could have been used in the Vietnam War in Vietnam. And it was actually authorized at different points to be used in all of these different instances of war. And yet, for some reason, with this one weapon, and you could also maybe throw biological weapons as well in there, we suddenly have the ability to wipe out our enemies and we don't use it. And it goes against human history. When the reason the Black Plague spread to Europe is because when the Black Plague hit a group of armies in Turkey, they catapulted the dead bodies of their people into that city. And the people in that city jumped on boats and went to Europe trying to escape it. Like, humans didn't care if they killed many, many people for a very long time. That's just what you did to your enemies. They would take and destroy and pillage and burn until suddenly they stopped. They created a weapon that was absolutely massively powerful. You could use it to control the entire world. But for the first time, the people who have that weapon don't use it. In fact, they created system upon system upon system to not use it. And that goes against everything we've ever done.
Sure.
We create weapons and we use them to control other people. Now we've created weapons and we do everything we can to make sure none of us use them.
But your argument that you're talking through is a human nature one. It's one of the dynamics of humanity as a whole. I'm asking more of just like, broadly speaking, what makes you think humanity has to live?
Oh,
like
I think that the reason why is because I think God has not determined that humans are going to wipe themselves out with a nuclear bomb. I don't think it makes sense that given human nature, given everything we know about history, given the way we've always used every other weapon, that we suddenly stopped using this powerful weapon so that could wipe us out right at the time period when we could. It doesn't make sense to me that we would do everything else the way we always have, and then we suddenly develop the ability not to, especially because, and I didn't even get into some of these, we did actually authorize the nuclear weapon. We authorized nuclear weapons against Taiwan, or against China when China was going to invade Taiwan in 1956. Richard Nixon authorized nuclear jets into the air to bomb North Korea when North Korea actually shot down one of our planes. And then he unauthorized them a couple hours later after he was convinced not to. And at least according to one report, he might have authorized them while drunk, which means not only did humans have this ability to wipe out entire nations, but we actually had them, and our world leaders had them, not like very mature philosophers sitting around a room thinking about their existence and consequences of their actions, but they were authorizing the use of them while they were completely inebriated, maybe even at a party with friends. And that's a scary thing to think about.
I'm thinking of three counterpoints. The first one is like just a more cynical look of, hey, we're only 80 years in. We still got plenty of time to wipe out everybody. Yes, it's a good stretch of luck that we've made it this far, but it's inevitable.
See that word,
and it's
the use of the
come.
word, though, you just used it, and that's what it's funny because that's what the ChatGPT and AI used as well. They said, "Well, the luck." But how can we as Christians don't believe in luck? So we have to put. I mean, is science really going to say, "Yeah, 80 years of luck"? That to me is just as miraculous as God, right? It defies expectation.
If we all end up dying next year, then I think it is.
I agree. I opened
you
with
could
the
chalk
fact
it up
that
to
if the nuclear bomb suddenly, if it suddenly starts getting really bright in here, then my argument is not going to work. But at that point, there won't be anyone to counter argue because we're all dead, right?
No.
This argument works until, theoretically it works until it doesn't.
But that's the cynical approach, is that we're only 80 years in and it's still coming and it's still inevitable.
I would but even to that person, I would even say 80 years is a remarkably long stretch of time when you look at history, when you look at the 20th century, when you look at how violent humans have been. We haven't stopped being as violent, actually. Like, we are just as prone to war. We have wars happening around the world. And even right now, wars happening because of nuclear weapons to keep people from having them and things like that. The wars have not stopped. We just, for some reason, aren't using the one weapon that would absolutely end all war. And the countries that have it refuse to use it.
Wouldn't the secular viewpoint, though, just say humanity has finally gotten smart enough to care about humans enough? Like,
so
I'm failing to see how this would be a compelling
argument
for
So that
God.
is the secular argument, and to which I would say, but wouldn't all of the continuous wars and bloodshed and everything we know about humanity go against that? And also, wouldn't all the near misses? We have many instances, many of them, where nuclear weapons almost went off. That wasn't done. Those times where the jets kept trying to go up into the air, the nuclear submarines kept trying to launch torpedoes, the missiles kept trying. That's not a moment where humanity progressed, where humanity became too mature to use them. That's a moment where humanity was trying to actively use them and it didn't work out. And the thing is, you could say, well, sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes the dice rolls a perfect, 6. But the thing is, we've managed for 81 years every close call to roll a 6. That's beyond just good dice moments. That's over and over and over again. You have to keep rolling a perfect number for this to work. And for 81 years, flawed humans with bad technology have managed to keep doing it. We've had many radar instances, many different miscommunications, many submarines. We are only talking about the many ones that we know about. We all know that there are even more that governments don't put out there. We know there are even more that could go on from there. And not to mention, too, one of the biggest ones, which I have on my list here that I didn't even talk about, the fact that the Soviet Union collapsed and they had thousands upon thousands of warheads sitting in poorly guarded facilities in countries like Kazakhstan and Belarus that were falling apart on the inside with corrupt leaders. And not one of those nuclear warheads managed to get into the hands of people who wanted to actively get them and use them on other people. There are lots of countries around the world, Iran, North Korea, that are actively trying to get nuclear weapons. These nuclear weapons were all available, and somehow not one of them was able to get one.
That's another distinction, though, that I want to make, is that you seem to be operating on the premise that if one nuclear warhead is launched, then all of humanity gets wiped out, which I know is like the doomsday scenario that we propose in all of our media. And maybe during the height of the Cold War, like that might have been...
I would certainly argue that during the 50 years of Cold War, that was very true. And I think we've become so removed from that because we live in the year 2026 and not the year 1986. We have completely forgotten just how close humanity was to actual full destruction. It's removed from us because for 30 plus years, that's not been a thing. Like even the fact that we have all these nuclear warheads, for the most part, we don't even... I don't even remember the last time a president, maybe they do, but I don't remember any presidential talking points talking about nuclear warheads. And if they were, it was basically like, I won't let that terrorist nation or that North Korea get nuclear warheads. We forget. We've had these powerful weapons for so long. We've actually kind of forgotten how powerful and world-ending that they truly are. We are so comfortable with the fact that we have weapons that can wipe us out in an instant that we have literally forgotten that they're even there. And yet the fact is they are that powerful and they are still just as much present as they were before. We've just become numb to it.
So it sounds like now you're revising your claim you're specifically talking about the Cold War. Like it's a miracle we made it through the Cold War.
I think that depending on the nation, for example, Russia still has a lot of nuclear warheads. And I do think that if Russia had... Well, they have themselves said, if you want to go down a scary hole of thought, look at Alexander Dugin, who is like an elite advisor to Putin, who has a theology, and their theology in Russia is something to the effect of, it'll all burn, which is the effect of basically saying, we kind of foresee a world someday where everything goes up in flames, but we think that a new Roman Republic will rise in Russia when it happens. And he even put on plays about how and the plays would end with everything on metaphorical fire, and then Russia rose out of the play alive and happy. And that's one of the main advisors to Putin. So that's kind of a scary thought that these people who are still actively committing, doing war stuff and still have an active access to many nuclear warheads have a whole philosophy based on everything burning down. And they're not the only ones. There are many different Muslim groups that have put out there, they believe that when the world is at its utmost chaos, when the world is completely at war and in flames, that's when the 13th Imam or whoever it is, Allah comes back and all that kind of stuff. And so those groups are also actively seeking nuclear weapons. They think it's okay to launch the world into a nuclear war because they think that's what Allah is basically waiting on. And those are two pretty powerful groups of people that lots of wars and things around the world are happening because of the way those two groups view the world.
I still think it's likely that there will be nuclear detonations in the future. Like, I don't think we're out of this. Like, I think it's still very much a part of reality. Now, for your biblical worldview or I should say, the biblical worldview, humans have to be there in the end. So the only thing that really, like, humanity has to survive. It doesn't mean that a good chunk of humanity doesn't get wiped out.
I would agree. But here's what I would say, though. You know that if the nuclear levels, especially during the Cold War, had gone off, humanity would not have survived that. I mean, I believe the actual estimation is if the true nuclear fallout happened where both sides, Russia and America, or China and America, because it's not like the Cold War hasn't really truly ended. China has, I think, 600 plus nuclear warheads themselves. If America and China go to war and it becomes nuclear, that's the same problem. And the nuclear warheads that China has are more powerful, I believe, if I read correctly, than the ones that Russia has. So the idea that the Cold War has ended because the Soviet Union collapsed, there are still 9 different countries right now with nuclear warheads that could easily start launching them. India and Pakistan in 2019 almost did. In fact, it was a huge conflict where India... is it India or Pakistan? I apologize. I forget which one. They thought the other country was about to launch a nuclear warhead, so they basically sent like a tip down the line, like, hey, we're going to go ahead and deploy ours because we're pretty sure they're deploying theirs. And both sides had to be talked down from the ledge because they were getting ready to launch nuclear. Now, I don't know that Pakistan and India's nuclear war would have led to nuclear Armageddon in the same way that China and America or Russia and America would. But it wouldn't have been good. I think that would have been a bad sign for where nuclear weapons were headed. And yet again, they were stopped from doing so. We all know that the efforts to get Iran to not have a nuclear warhead have been continuous and constant. We also have, these are just the big nukes and stuff too. We're not even talking about the fact that the world has also had very small nuclear weapon launchers, like the nuclear bazooka. Have you heard about the nuclear bazooka, Joel?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah. A carryable sized nuclear weapon that was invented to stop people from using big nuclear bombs. The idea was if you have small tactical nukes like the nuclear bazooka that could literally be shot by soldiers, then it would scare people away from using the big nukes. The problem was, then everyone realized, oh shoot, we've created even more nuclear weapons, and once you use the nuclear bazooka, you've already made the war nuclear. This nuclear bazooka was invented 5 years after the atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki by Oppenheimer himself, who thought he would be making the world more peaceful somehow by creating nuclear bazookas, that it would somehow rein in the atomic bomb itself. By the way, didn't see that in the Oppenheimer movie. Like, that would have been a cool add-on, by the way. And he also invented a bazooka. But there were many problems with the Oppenheimer movie. That's just one of them. All of these things I'm saying. So your idea, I think your biggest counter argument that I'm hearing so far is, well, we could still blow ourselves up. Which, I guess. I mean, yes.
We could still blow ourselves up, and humanity is much more equipped now to survive any type of nuclear fallout than we've been in previous years.
That is a super not correct answer that I would give you on that one. When it comes to nuclear weapons, our weapons haven't gotten any weaker. Our worldwide infrastructure, like, we are all more connected now than we were even 50 years ago. And the 50 years ago, there was a second world and a first world. People don't like those terms now, but there was like an economy run through Soviet Union that was kind of independent of the first world, and the first world had its own economy, and like they weren't meshed together. So theoretically, if one of those two powers blew up, the other side could kind of recover. Again, theoretically, if you launched first and they didn't launch on you, you could have a shot. But now we don't have that. Our entire world is so enmeshed that if one area where oil tankers is embargoed, the entire world feels it. So we're telling, like, there's no world where if we drop a bunch of nuclear bombs on each other, the entire world
would
doesn't
survive. Humanity would be able to go on as a whole.
I'm not sure that we could. We are so dependent on technology, on electricity, on everything that we currently have that makes our life. Turn electricity off for, a couple months, and one major country in the world, China, America, France, and there's no infrastructure. There's nothing bringing supplies in. How many of those people truly make it?
There are whole countries in Africa that aren't even going to know that happened.
Yeah, but those countries are still extremely dependent on outside resources coming in. Like, they're not living in a complete bubble over there. Medicines and all kinds of stuff come in from the outside.
There are independent areas though. There are independent societies.
Okay, but Joel, if your biggest argument is that, Troy, nuclear weapons could fall everywhere and the radiation could damage, but there will be a few tribal groups somewhere that make it, I would still argue that providentially, if we're talking about the difference between total eradication, 8.2 billion people gone, and near total eradication, 8.115 billion people gone, that's still, in my opinion, providential that we haven't done that. Like, it is amazing.
Yes, it's
how
providential.
Close we've come
Maybe
and
not to
done it.
the exact same extent, because again, all we really need to fulfill Revelation is for humanity to be there in the end, and we don't know how much.
But I don't
has
think
passed.
no, we don't. If now we're obviously talking futurist arguments. So if you're maybe a post millennial or maybe you're gonna whatever. But if we're talking about these things in like a Revelation or something like that have not happened, it's a worldwide system that the Antichrist adopts. He does not adopt a couple tribes in Africa system or a few third world countries survive nuclear radiation system. He's adopting over an entire world system. So unless the argument is the entire world will nuke itself, but a few millions of people will survive, and then 10,000 years from now, that's when the Antichrist comes over. I guess that's possible.
If Russia and America got wiped out, I don't know the economical state of how everything operates. But if America and Russia were no more, and it was up to Europe to run the world, fast forward 500 years, I think the world would be okay.
The problem is though, the problem is it's not that nuclear. If just Moscow and just Washington D.C. exploded, but the problem is not that when these countries explode, they explode alone. It's the radiation that comes out of launching those kinds of nuclear warheads.
Again, I'd love to have a nuclear physicist on with us, which we don't have. Current day thermonuclear warheads don't have radiation fallout. I feel highly confident that is an accurate statement. That the nuclear radioactive fallout of our fiction.
We got so stuck on this nuclear radiation thing. I thought was the easy part of the convincing. We didn't even move on to the actual next part, which I think is even more concerning. And we got stuck here. So yes. All right. So how about this, Joel? I will alter the case slightly. We'll call it the Armageddon argument for God. Okay. Would you agree that we had the ability to blow ourselves up to kingdom come with the most powerful technology ever? You go back to Genghis Khan, those guys couldn't destroy all of humanity. We had that power with pretty bad technology compared to today's technology. It was the best technology of its time. But compared to the technology we have today, it was significantly worse than our own.
Sure.
Now, and yet we managed to not use these weapons that were world-ending weapons for decades while being at war and having an unbelievable amount of close calls. We didn't actually use them and destroy each other. Can we agree that for the 40 to 50, we'll put it just to the Cold War era for 40 to 50 years, that ability existed and nobody did it. We'll start there. Now, the world is not a safer place. I suppose you are convinced, and maybe I haven't looked into nuclear radiation fallout, that nuclear radiation will no longer have an effect on the world. I find that hard to believe, considering when the nuclear reactor in Japan started leaking radiation, it caused trouble around the world. I would find it hard to believe that dropping an enormous amount of nuclear warheads on other nations would not. But let's say that it doesn't. That's not the only threat we currently sit under, because also these major nations have collected multiple labs where they create super viruses and they play with them and they edit them, and they've had multiples and multiples of lab leaks from these labs with some pretty dangerous stuff, and they have yet to destroy the entire world with these things either. We have also since then created AIs with this is a new one that we're putting on the home front. Militaries are creating AIs so that when the time comes, these militaries can fight each other with these AI tools at their disposal. And with all the problems that could come with adding all of that to your technology grid, and there have been many of them, we also, as of yet, 2026, if you're listening to this in 2032 and you're going, you didn't know how bad it would get, well, I would say you probably have better things to do with your time than listen to Revived Thoughts. But we appreciate you for listening there on the other side of nuclear/viral/AI outbreak. But I would say that we actually are creating a more dangerous world, and that every year we go by, the world has not gotten safer, but actually the number of threats that we create for ourselves compounds, and yet we continue not to destroy ourselves.
Yeah. So this is actually a pretty well-known, well-discussed phenomenon when it comes to trying to find alien life. You've probably heard the Great Filter.
Yep, I have.
This is the Great Filter argument. You're literally just describing the Great Filter argument. The
Except
fact that,
unlike the Great Filter argument, I am saying the Great Filter argument is correct. I'm arguing that the reason we aren't filtered out is God.
yeah, I would agree with that.
Well, so then why have you been arguing so hard this whole episode?
I've been more nitpicking your opinions on practicality of nuclear combat.
I just think it's
guess,
funny
is
that
the
you were like,
main
I'm not a nuclear physicist, but I know exactly when a nuclear bomb will go off and the amount of radiation it spills.
Okay, should we explain the Great Filter?
Yeah, go ahead. Explain the Great Filter argument.
The Great Filter, I mean, so it originated from people trying to figure out why we haven't discovered alien intelligence. And so when people are looking out into space for possible, these are scientists, obviously, they're looking out into space. There's certain things in solar systems that they're looking to see that might be evidence of another civilization. And so there's things like mining a planet or trying to harness energy from the star in that solar system that might be evidence that that solar system is inhabited by someone else. And so they're looking for evidence signatures of that someone has been in other solar systems. And they've been scouring the universe for years and years and years, and there is zero evidence of anything, any solar system has ever been touched or tampered with. And so the conclusion is that for some reason, bear with me, taking the secular scientist approach to life evolving in the universe, is that societies don't make it that far for whatever reason. And that there is some type of filter where society, if life is originating in other places in the universe, it eventually hits some barrier to where it does not continue on. And the hook of it, I guess the interesting part of it is that humanity is like starting to bump up against that wall to where we are starting to have an impact on our solar system. And like within the next 1,000 years or so, we'll be starting to make the impacts on our solar system that we are trying to observe in other solar systems and failing to find. So that either means we are somewhere in the midst of where other societies are supposedly getting filtered out. And the debate is, are we about to bump up against the Great Filter and get filtered out and not be able to progress anymore in civilization? Or the more optimistic look is, for some reason, somehow we have passed the Great Filter and the Great Filter is behind us somehow, and our society is now flourishing in ways that others have failed to do.
One. I've
You've
only
never heard the
heard
optimistic
people
one?
mention the negative one. I didn't even know there was an optimistic answer to that question.
Optimistic say we've made it through somehow, and now we are uniquely equipped.
If you think that's like, okay, that sounds like pure sci-fi or whatever. I mean, Elon Musk seems to be a pretty big believer in it, because he has mentioned over and over again that the reason he's pushing SpaceX and the reason he wants a mission to Mars is because his words, not mine, the best chance at humanity surviving is being multiplanetary. And the sooner we can get into other planets and start life there and start getting things going, the less likely a chance that our nuclear bombs, for example, might blow ourselves up. If we're all on Earth when those nuclear bombs go off, then we all die. But if some of us are on Mars and some of us are on the moon and blah, 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 then theoretically you keep going. Now, this is obviously a very secular worldview, and I do not subscribe to it. I don't think there's any evidence that we will be in those places 1,000 years from now. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I don't think we will. With that said, I don't think there's any harm in putting people on the moon, because I think it's pretty cool. So I'm a mixed bag on that one.
But the point is the theories of what might have caused, like, what our filter attributes are.
So here's where I would. You're putting the Great Filter. Yeah, you were saying that this is just the Great Filter argument, but I would actually disagree. The Great Filter argument is that there is some filter humanity, not humanity, all races, if they're there. Now, of course, the very obvious answer for why we're not seeing alien civilizations is because there aren't aliens and God created life on Earth, and that's why there's no aliens. Okay, so the secularists can't subscribe to that, so they came up with the Great Filter. Fine. The idea, I would argue that there's no, evidence that AI viruses, all these things could be that great filter. But certainly
AI is a big one that
agree.
people talk about now. It could be AI.
Now,
it could be like some type of disease that wipes
Yeah.
out humanity, or nuclear fallout, like we've described.
For sure. Which is what I would argue, nuclear stuff today. AI talk today is what nuclear talk was 50 years ago. We've
Sure.
created this thing that could absolutely wipe us out. We don't understand it, and we keep making it more powerful every 10 minutes for some reason. That's what AI talk has become today. That's what nuclear talk was, 50, 40 years ago. The thing is, though, and like I said, we've gotten comfortable with the nukes. We don't even. That's like if you're going to say, "Oh, hey, we're going to talk about how scary nuclear weapons are." People are like, it's not news. Come on, we got AI now, right? We even, we've got this new thing that can destroy us now. But that's kind of my point. Every year we've managed to update. We're not getting safer. We managed to upgrade the threats to ourselves on a more and more magnificent level. We've now, because these AIs could just launch the nukes, for example. All you have to do is have China send the right AI to America to cause America's nukes to blow itself up. And likewise, I'm sure America would like to create that's the level we're now at, where we can take even the old weapons and make them more dangerous on ourselves. I don't think that's necessarily a great filter, though. I think it's just proof that we've created a more and more dangerous, unstable system, and yet we continue to roll the dice perfectly. We continue to not blow ourselves up, not create a bio super weapon despite trying, not leak it into the world despite trying, and not manage to send the entire world into Armageddon. And I'm arguing that there's actually no real good explanation for why we've been this lucky. That God is the explanation for why we've been this lucky. That is actually a proof of God that humanity hasn't managed to destroy itself with such powerful tools.
I feel like that argument, not in application to nuclear warheads, but just to humanity existing this long, there's got to be a name for that. Like, that's got to be an existing argument for God.
Humanity, I tried to Google it around, and maybe please, I'm sure somebody who's super in on apologetics will come in and be like, historical fine tuning is what we call it, or something.
Right.
Like, I know the argument, conditions for life on Earth are so perfect that it's an argument for God. I use that argument. It's a great argument for God, and I think it is not just an argument for God. I think it's genuinely what God did. He created the Earth. It's perfect for life.
Sure.
I believe that. But I also think that what you said, that humans haven't completely wiped out the ability to use life on Earth, and maybe that would be the broader way to use that, is also an argument for God. In our sinful condition, we turn everything and corrupt it, destroy it, attack it, and blah blah blah, create nukes that could blow it all up. If we had launched those nuclear weapons by our bad technology, like we tried to do many, many times, we wouldn't have just destroyed life for humanity. We would have destroyed life for everything. And yet somehow we continued to not do so. We create those viruses. We would destroy life for ourselves. We have these AIs now that can unleash these viruses and unleash these nuclear weapons, but we still don't do it. The amount of ways we can hurt ourselves is crazy. And I had others listed too. Like we have nuclear reactors that have melted down that didn't lead to bigger issues than they were. Like we've got all kinds of different things we do all the time, from different pollutions and things that we've sprayed into the air. When we were young, we had no idea that some of those chemicals couldn't have come back and killed us later. Like the number of things that we do is just insane. And yet, despite that, we continue to not destroy ourselves. I don't think it's an accident. I think it's just God protecting us, and that's why. And by the burden of proof that you're going to keep saying, well, the atheists will ignore it. I don't say it's a perfect argument. Atheists don't tend to be persuaded by any of the arguments. Very rarely does an atheist go, wow, you argued me in. That was the one. But what I would say to them is I would say the burden of proof becomes on them. How do you explain the unbelievable fortune and providence that has been over humanity ever since we've created these dangerous weapons, and even before? If there is no God protecting us, why do we stay protected? Why have we managed to stay protected? And why not only have we stayed protected, but we've actually been relatively safe, all things considered? It goes against all of human history that we would do this.
So let me preface by saying, of course I agree with you. I agree that God's hand has been on humanity ever since he created us, and that, he is helping guide us just like he's helping us in our own individual life. I feel like it kind of parallels our own life, right? You can make very similar arguments to how you're still here, and there's so many times where you could have died. There's so many times you could have had car accidents or fallen ill, gotten, a terminal illness, but for some reason you're still here today, must be proof of God. On a macro scale, you could apply that to humanity. We're here because we're here.
I would argue that if I was regularly juggling grenades, you know what I'm saying, and I kept dropping the grenades and they kept not going off, like, you know what I'm saying? And
there's a lot of stupid people out there. There's a lot of stupid people that are juggling grenades quite a bit in life, and for some reason they're still here. I'm saying you can only make that opinion and that observation because you happen to still be alive to be able to make that opinion and that observation.
I agree. And obviously the argument from the atheist, well, in a year from now when we blow ourselves up, then this argument becomes moot. And in a year from now, if we blow ourselves up, the argument does become moot. The burden of proof does lie on people who can explain how we have managed to walk on the tightrope for 81 years when nobody living at the time thought we could walk on it for 200. Nobody living at the time thought we could walk on it for 10 minutes. As soon as World War II ended, many different commissions and things were trying to fund to figure out how to keep the nuclear, like one of the big things they pushed was we should all disarm our nuclear weapons. And at the time, America was the only one with them. Like nobody thought we could do this. Nobody thought we could do it during the Cold War. It was inevitable, right? At some point, we will blow each other. Nobody thought the nuclear warheads could stay safe when the Soviet Union fell. At some point, those are going to get into bad hands, and we're going to see this huge issue come. Yet here we are, 81 years later, juggling now nuclear warheads, terrible viruses in labs that all have to stay in good condition. Any leak anywhere causes a whole bunch of problems everywhere. And we're throwing AI into the mix. And somehow, despite the fact that we're on the tight, we've now added a, what is that called? A unicycle. And we're standing on it. And we're going across the tightrope at this point. We're just making this thing more and more dangerous. We should be falling, but we're not. Maybe the reason we're not falling is simply because something has been carrying us through. Will I expect an atheist? No, of course not. Atheists don't tend to listen. But is it worth pointing out that it's something God is doing? Yeah.
Black Death, Like, what about the plague? There's some very poor times in humanity. You're approaching this with such optimism, and I love it. It's great. Maybe I'm just in a pessimistic mood today, but you're laying out all of these horrible things that we are surviving. Again, I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that we might be entering somewhat of a dark age. Like it's going to be real rough for people. I don't feel like that's what you're describing, what you're imagining.
The Black Death is a great example. Black Death, I even used it earlier, how humanity catapulted Black Death victims into people's houses, like into their cities to destroy them. Like they intentionally used the Black Death as a weapon on their enemies because they could. But the Black Death, two things against it. A, we, besides those people catapulting dead bodies in, we have no ability to spread the we have no clue. We don't like, that's not something we could pull the trigger on, right? Like it just moved around. They didn't even understand how it moved around. It just moved from person to person. They didn't realize it was from flea bites. So there was no explanation for that. That was human led. Of course, they would, go and kill Jewish people or witches or whatever, thinking it was human led, but there was no human led explanation for that. These nuclear weapons, these bio created weapons sitting in labs, these AI created things that will be weapons that are currently being, those are human created disasters, not natural disasters like the Black Death that fall on people systematically throughout history. But these are human created disasters. And the difference is too, the Black Death, though very powerful and very deadly, could not kill every person on Earth because there were always going to be some people who are immune or a very small percentage of people who survived. These nuclear weapons, these bio-created weapons, if they're not careful, these AI things could theoretically kill everybody. Like this isn't just, they could kill most of us. This is truly could wipe the entire planet clean of humans. That is a much bigger thing, and it's created by us, not by, nature, really providence. But again, it's not created by the world. This is something we're adding to the table that it's not a bad earthquake. It's a world-ending phenomena that we have the trigger on.
I feel like I could just summarize everything by saying the world is crazy. We live in the most dangerous time that's ever existed. But I believe that God will preserve some of his people past whatever obstacles we're going to face in the next 500 years. I feel like that checks all the
feel-
boxes.
So Joel, and I'm going to throw this to the audience. Anybody who wants to chat? I feel like Joel, you're expecting something. Like
I'm
you're like
expecting
Troy.
something.
You're wrong because you don't foresee the big giant thing we're about to all fall into, where half of humanity gets wiped out. And maybe you are correct. Again, see, you and I, you're also banking on human history. You're looking at me. And
Yeah,
going,
that's what I'm saying. You've literally
81
just
years.
set the precedence for the
Yeah.
past 200 years of civilization at least. But I believe that God will preserve some people. So I'm
that's a different-
adhering
so
to
the-
your philosophy there.
So I guess the way we're looking at it is I'm looking at this and going, wow, God has made it. We have not killed ourselves. It's amazing we haven't. It's an unbelievable amount of close calls. I think the Lord's hand is protecting us. He has his own plans for how the world is going to end, and that's why we haven't triggered our own end. Joel is going, no, you're right, Troy. These weapons are super dangerous. We are making the world more devastating. I think we are going to blow ourselves up. But a group of us will survive, and God will use that to end the world the proper way he has planned. So I guess...
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm
So
not
I
saying it
guess
will happen.
you're
I'm just
saying
saying
we're gonna
I
trip
still
off a
think it
tightrope.
might be a possibility that I wouldn't rule out some type of...
Look, I'm not saying that I'm going to start passing nuclear weapons out as party favors because we can't blow ourselves up, right? I'm not going to go that far. I do think we need to live in the world and be wise in our application of it. I'm not saying that create as many bioweapons as you want, different countries. God won't let us die until it's time. True as that may be, he might choose to let an earlier punishment come through, like you're saying, and we might see a group. You're not wrong. Obviously, that would disqualify the theory. And let's just pray that you are wrong and that my optimistic
I don't want to
version
be
is
right. I don't want to be right. I'm
Joel,
just
is
saying.
this the first time in our entire maybe friendship where I'm super optimistic about the world not having a cataclysm and catastrophe, and you're super pessimistic that the world will have a catastrophe of some
It
kind?
does seem like I am certainly more of a realist in this scenario than your.
That's what every
optimistic view.
negative person says. They always go with the "I'm a realist" when what they really mean to say
You
is they're
literally
cynic.
just laid out all the evidence for what makes this so dangerous.
So you're agreeing. It's compelling. We should be dead, but we're not. My argument is God is protecting us. That's why we
We're
haven't
not
killed ourselves.
yet. We're not. We haven't
Well,
faced mass destruction
as I
yet.
said, the only way to disprove it is for it to start happening. So as far as I'm concerned, we're good to go.
What a silly
That's my guess.
conversation.
It was fun. I enjoyed it, and it gave me a chance to just go through a bunch of nuclear close calls, which was, I wanted to do that anyway because I think they're fun and interesting and should make you a little more grateful for life on Earth, considering it's amazing how much we forget that we almost blew ourselves up like 900 different times.
Yeah, it is wild that there's never been an unintentional detonation of a nuclear warhead.
No, I guess the opposite. I guess there's two ways to walk away from this conversation. You can walk away from it with the Troy perspective of, wow, it's a good reminder. We could have killed ourselves. God is protecting us. What a great point. Or you can walk away from the Joel perspective of, well, we got away for now, but it's coming. So I think mine's better.
Hey,
You
but
should
in the
enjoy
midst
mine.
of the chaos, I trust in the Lord for all things. You know, like I don't let it ruin my day. I don't let it ruin my worldview.
What is it? The C.S. Lewis quote that says, "Hey, if all the he was actually addressing nuclear weapons, and I'm going to paraphrase him." So he said something to the effect of like, "If the nuclear bomb should come, let it come, but let it find us living, marrying, and having children, and going to parks, and let it come to us while we're fully alive, not hiding in fear of death." And I was like, "That's a good way to live." I think Lewis is right.
What a lovely sentiment, yeah.
This has been a great episode. We should really look for some kind of bunker supplies, advertising. This would have been a really good episode.
Yo,
for
we're
them.
gonna start our own line. Revive Thoughts, bunker rations. Survival.
Look, all the other companies, they'll send you food, but what are you going to do in that bunker? We're the only ones sending you church history sermons to read for the whole family. A nice
Only when
100
you
sermon packets that you'll
Help
open up.
reboot your society with some oldies.
Why, you're going to want to preserve those amazing sermons for the past, but everything's up in flames and under radiation. We will send you the 100 best sermons packet that you can enjoy. Don't open it till it's time, but you'll like them.
Okay. Should we wrap up this episode?
I mean, I can't imagine why we would. We haven't gotten off track at all. Anyway, we should wrap up this episode. But I will say, Joel, that was fun. And I had to go look up more on radiation, apparently. And I don't expect any books to be written, any great philosophers to come out of this one. But every day that we're still alive, my theory looks a little more true. That's all I'm going to say.
If you want to write into us, you can do so. revivedthoughts@gmail.com. revivedthoughts@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts about why we're still alive and God's hand in it all, I suppose.
You know, Joel, it's really funny that this is technically, I think, going to go out on our 7-year anniversary of a show, and I think it's funny that of all the episodes that could be playing, it was the argument between why didn't we blow ourselves up yet, and well, we couldn't blow ourselves up, but also we're probably going to blow ourselves up, but a couple of tribes in Africa or the Caucasus Mountains will bring it all back for us. That's going to be our big 7-year anniversary episode. So you know what, and I can't imagine a better revived conversation to lead out on. So it's been fun. All right, this is Troy and Joel, and you have been listening to Revived Thoughts.